Hello everyone, Miss Carrie here. I'm going to be working with the exclusive stamp set from This Calls for Confetti. This stamp set features our beloved This Calls for Confetti Bigfoot, some bats, a tree, and of course a candy bucket. There's also some fun sentiments like trick or treat, smell my feet, Yeti or not, it's Halloween. I'm here for the candy, and some larger sentiments like beware and humans. Before we get started with the project, I want to let you know that this is an exclusive stamp and die set made just for STAMPtember with Simon Says Stamps. This exclusive Smell My Feet collection is only available during this time, and there is a limited quantity available. If you love this collection as much as I do, make sure that you snag it before it disappears. I will add a link to this collection down in the description below. Let's take a look at all of the supplies we're going to need to create today's card. I'm going to be using the Halloween Scene Builder stencils from This Calls for Confetti. These feature some different images that you might want to use to build a Halloween background. There are some bats, moon, a tree, and this little graveyard scene. They're all super fun and easy to use. For the card base, I'm using a black A2 size. Over the top of this, I have a white background panel that's been cut a little bit smaller. I've also grabbed some cardstock to create a stenciled moon. This needs to be at least 4.5 by 4.5. To stamp my Bigfoot, I have some light gray cardstock. And I also have a couple of pieces of white cardstock that I'm going to use for the rest of the stamped images. These are some very basic supplies that you probably already have in your collection. As always, I will bring in some additional items as I create the project. I always encourage you to use what you already have in your craft stash, but if you would like a list of the items I'm using, one has been posted down in the description below, along with my affiliate link to the This Calls for Confetti shop. All right, we're going to start with the ink blending first. I'm going to be shading this in a deep purple to create a nighttime sky. With a blending brush, I'm going to add the Dusty Concord ink. I am focusing more of the color around the edges and leaving the center a little bit lighter. Around the edges, I'm going to add some hickory smoke. This is going to deepen those edges and create more of that glow-like look. I use Distress Oxides because it's always fun to add a little bit of water to create some texture. I'm going to spatter some over the top, and you'll see how that ink changes as it reacts with the water. So that was a really simple background. I'm going to set this aside to dry, and I'm going to create that layer for the hill. I'm using Rustic Wilderness Distress Oxide ink. This is a nice bold green that's going to go well with the bright purple. To deepen this a bit, I'm going to blend some hickory smoke over the top of it. You're going to see how this darkens that green and gives it more of that nighttime feel. The last thing I'm going to do with this is add a little bit of spatter. Instead of water, I'm going to bring in some watered down acrylic paint. All right, I'm going to set this aside to dry, and we're going to finish our last item here. I'm going to place my circle stencil in the center here and secure it in place. I'm going to blend some scattered straw Distress Oxide ink around the edges. As I do this, I'm leaving the center lighter. This is going to give it that look of a beautiful harvest moon. All right, I'm going to bring in the next stencil and I'm going to layer it over the top. I'm going to concentrate most of the color around the edges, and then I'm going to lighten my touch as I go towards the center of the moon so that I create that glowing feel. Now that I have all of these shapes in place, I'm going to remove this stencil, and then I'm going to bring my scattered straw in and go over the top of this. It's going to soften that gray a bit and create a hazy look. So once I remove the stencil, you'll be able to see how beautiful this looks. Now you could have done this right onto the background, but I'm going to use a circle die and cut this out real quick. To finish this moon, I'm going to add some bats with black texture paste. I'm using a black opaque texture paste. I'm just going to mix it right here on the stencil to make sure that I don't have any lumps. And then I'm going to run this over the bat design of the stencil. I chose to use texture paste because I wanted to add a little bit of dimension to my card. You don't have to use paste. You can use ink instead. All right, I'm going to set this with the other pieces of the background. As those all dry and set, we're going to stamp the images we need for the card. I'm going to start with the two Bigfoot images. Now, whenever you're cutting out stamped images with dies, you usually get this white outline, like I have here on the pumpkin buckets. I didn't want that for the two Bigfoot images, so I am going to stamp a tone on tone so that I have a darker gray image and a soft brown color around the edge. After stamping it the first time, you can see that there are some little parts and pieces that didn't get covered. You could leave it like this if you wanted to and make the Bigfoot look like it's got some multicolor fur. I'm going to stamp it a second time because I want it to have a nice solid color. All right, now that the first one's done, I'm going to go ahead and stamp the second one real quick. The next item I'm going to stamp is the sentiment. All right, the last item I need to stamp are the two pumpkin buckets. I'm going to be stamping these with spiced marmalade ink. Now, I always like to show you how you can level up on your techniques when you're stamping or die cutting your images. Today, I'm going to show you how we create a dual-toned image with these little candy buckets. I first stamped it in the bright orange, and now I'm going to create a black handle. I'm just going to bring over a little bit of black ink and use a fine brush to add that ink to the top part of the bucket. You could do this with masking, but it's much easier to do with a small detailed blending brush. Now you might have to do this a few times depending on how dark you want that handle. You can also add a little bit of ink around the edges of the bucket to give it more of an aged look. Now that we've added that black ink, you can see what a difference it makes between just a simple orange stamped image versus adding the little bit of details with black. I'm going to go off camera and cut these all out with the matching dies, and then I'm going to show you how to put the card together. I'm going to start by building the background. Like I said, you could have used that graveyard stencil to create the base, but instead I've used this second piece that I'm going to cut into a little hill shape with my scissors. This is just going to add a little bit of dimension to the card. I'm going to temporarily set the moon on the card just so that I can judge where this hill needs to set, and then I'll glue it in place. Once that's down, I'm going to glue this entire card panel onto the black card base. I do want the moon to lift off the card just a little bit, so I've added some 1mm foam tape to the back of it. All right, so our background's complete. Let's go ahead and grab all of our die cut pieces. You probably are wondering why there's more pieces here than I originally stamped. When I'm creating layered cards, I like to cut multiple die cuts. When you glue them together, you give them more stability. Layering multiple die cuts together also creates a chipboard-like look, and it saves you from having to use as much foam tape. So let me show you what I mean. I cut an additional layer of these, and when I glue them together, you can see that it's a little bit thicker. Like I said, it almost looks like chipboard. I'm going to do the same with the pumpkin buckets. I cut an additional layer of these, and when I glue them together, you can see that it's a little bit thicker. For the sentiment, I cut out 3 additional layers. I'm going to glue these together real quick with some liquid adhesive, and then I'm going to show you the difference between the 4 layers and the 2 layers that I created on the pumpkin. So let me bring these up to the camera. You can see that the sentiment looks almost like a piece of chipboard, and I'm not going to have to use any foam tape with this. Now all the layers are together. All we have to do is adhere them to the card. I am adding foam tape to the back of the 2 little Bigfoot children. Now that these are in place, I'm going to bring in the little pumpkin buckets. Now with these little pumpkin buckets, you could either slide the handle underneath the hands, or you could place them over the top. I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive on the back and use my tweezers to help me put them in place. All right, the last thing we're going to do is bring in that sentiment. Because I layered all of those die cuts together, I don't need to add any foam tape to have it pop up off the card. I'm just going to add a little bit of glue on the back and pop it right here on the moon. There we go. The Smell My Feet stamp set does also come with some little bats, and you can see that it adds just another level of dimension. And there you have it. This has a whimsical look with bright Halloween colors. And you can almost picture those 2 little children running through the forest collecting their pails of candy. Remember, the Smell My Feet stamp set is a limited time STAMPtember release. So if you'd like to add Bigfoot to your craft stash, grab it before it's gone. I want to thank you for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I can't wait to see what you create.